to another episode of Brewluminati, the podcast where we drink beer and talk about conspiracy theories. I'm John.
This is Jake.
And this is part 2 of our social media mental health crisis COVID exploration thingy.
Perfect.
Talking about all that is too much. It's way too much to cover in one episode. I don't know what we were thinking.
It's massive.
Well, it's not one episode. It's 2 episodes. But
Right.
It's a lot. This is a lot to talk about. But before we talk about that, let's get into the beer. Jake, what are you drinking?
So today up, it is from Trophy Brewing, which is hands down one of Raleigh's best breweries, at least one of the most prolific. They
Agree.
Definitely put out some crazy stuff. They're probably most known for Trophy Wife.
They have a handful of beers that stay on all the time.
Everywhere.
And they're good. I actually don't love their permanent taps. I like the one-offs and the weird stuff.
Same.
Right towards the beginning of summer, I'm always like, when is a yard of the month, which is a cream ale that I love?
Yeah.
Like, when's a yard of the month going to come out? Because I'm waiting for that shit.
So pre-COVID, they used to do all these crazy like weekend festivals and stuff.
Yeah, they'd have pop-ups and crap like that.
Very cool. And they've got a pizza shop over on, is that on Glenwood, I think?
No, so they have the Maywood, which is where the brewery is. And
Right.
that's like their tap room, and that's where they do the pop-ups and stuff. And then they have it's either Martin Street or Morgan Street. It's somewhere downtown,
Morgan
like
Street.
back there near where
it's over
Charlie
there.
Goodnights and all that is.
Yep.
And that is where they have the tap room and pizza.
And the pizza's pretty good.
And I think there's a third one now, but I don't know where it is.
I'm not sure either. I know they bought the place next door and they're doing some stuff there.
Yeah. I've also heard the pizza is like really, really good, but I went towards the beginning of when the pizza one opened and I did not like it.
No?
Not at all. I didn't like the atmosphere.
It was early
I didn't
days?
like the pizza. Yeah. But so many people have come back and been like, bro, you got to go back. You got to try it again. And I just haven't. Well, and then COVID hit and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, fuck me. Can't go anywhere.
I was there around this time last year and had a pizza and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was, for Raleigh, it was a pretty good pizza.
Yeah. I have my pizza go-tos. So far,
Lily's.
Trophy's not it.
Lily's is the pizza go-to.
Lily's. I like, I've been going to, so I went to North Carolina State University, and right across the street from the, this thing called the Bell Tower, essentially,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
right in that area. It's not right across the street. It's like halfway between the library and the Bell Tower. There's this little pizza, real shitty pizza spot, but it's called Slice of New York Pizza. It used to be called I Heart New York Pizza, and it's lit. They make this lasagna pizza where it's basically like slices of meatball, mozzarella.
That's crazy.
So, well, let me start over. So it's got like the pizza sauce on it, and then it has mozzarella on it, and then on top of that, it's slices of meatball, and then like huge chunks of ricotta, and then on top of that, there's like meatball marinara.
Is there pasta in it, like lasagna?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's just the theory of layering is what makes it the lasagna.
Yeah, and it's so good.
And they're the place that they do a gluten-free night or something.
So I Heart New York, or Slice of New York Pizza, has a gluten-free pizza that's available all the time.
Okay.
And you can put their specialty toppings on that gluten-free topping. And my wife, she's gluten-free. She loves it. There's another pizza spot that people rave about. It's called Oakwood Pizza Box, and it's downtown, like near Peace College.
Yes.
And they do a gluten-free pizza Thursdays.
That's what I'm thinking of.
I personally am not that enthused by them.
Sure.
But people love it. I don't want to say anything bad about them. They're great.
Yeah.
But, there's other pizzas I like better, to be honest.
Okay. And completely roundabout back to the beer.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You got to go pizza.
if you're eating pizza, you're drinking beer. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And Raleigh surprisingly has good pizza.
Yeah. And really great beer. So, shocker.
And, I moved here from Los Angeles and I was constantly surprised about how great the beer scene was here. I didn't expect it at all when I moved here, and consistent. I mean, even for somebody who went to San Diego all the time and saw the San Diego scene, which is out of control, here is competing very, very healthily.
Yeah. I think I got a little bit spoiled because my old house was within walking distance of the Trophy Brewery on Maywood. That was like my local bar. That's just where I went all the time. And so like there's a bunch of other breweries in Raleigh. I have thoughts about them, but to me, like
That's home.
Trophy, hands down the best brewery in Raleigh, and then I mean within North Carolina, the Asheville breweries, they're just so good.
Oh yeah, and now we have a new burial out by
Durham.
The
It's
Morgan
here. It's
Street
at Morgan
Food
Street
Hall.
Food
Morgan
Hall.
Street
Yeah.
Food Hall. They've got
There's
burial.
a High Wire or something.
Yes,
in Durham.
in Durham they have a High Wire, which High Wire is pretty great.
Yeah,
they do cool like experimental stuff.
Yeah, and the Sierra Nevada Auxiliary Brewery is in Mills River,
which we got to go down to that.
It's sick.
Yeah. So back to Trophy, because I'm drinking a Trophy Pumpkin Spice Milky Way, which Milky Way is one of their standard porters, which are stouts that they have going on.
Yeah,
and it's pretty consistent. I've had it regularly. It's nice. It's creamy. It's a good stout. It's it's serviceable. It's out there. The pumpkin spice is a good addition, for this time of year, obviously. I know you're not a huge fan. I'm into it.
Not a huge fan, yeah.
I'm into it, but I don't think I could do more than one of these. I think I'd be capped out. Yeah. Usually I'm a big stout guy. I could go deep on a couple stouts, but the pumpkin spice, I think I'm about at one on those. But it's it's from Trophy. It's coming in at 5.5%. Kind of a nice dark theme on the can with a bunch of pumpkins. And technically it's a salted caramel sweet stout. You can definitely taste the caramel when you drink it. It's very kind of heavy on that.
Yeah.
I would say the caramel is almost as strong as the pumpkin on it, but it's definitely there in the aftertaste.
Yeah. So I drank one of these earlier this week because it's a special edition. So this beer came out at the time we're recording this last Friday, and I had a friend go grab a couple. She brought me two. I split one with somebody earlier this week, and I already know that I don't really like Milky Way, but when she was like, there's a special edition pumpkin spice version coming out, I was like, all right, I have to at least try it. And yeah, I mean, to me, I'm not a big stout fan. There's certain stouts I love, the Samuel Smith's organic chocolate stout is a banger. I'm all for that. I already don't love Milky Way, just the standard one. So I kind of knew I was in for one I wasn't going to be in love with this one. And I mean, personally, I was right. But the one thing that I do want to say is so every so often, I don't know if I've said this on this show before already, but there's certain beers where I don't like the beer, but if you mix it with another beer, it magically becomes amazing.
Talked about this. Yeah,
okay. So yeah, we talked about it with Big Boss, where I don't like Bad Penny or Harvest Time, but if you mix them, they're dope. It's the exact same thing with this. So I can see that. Do not like Milky Way at all. But Trophy makes another beer, which is also just as dope. That I also don't like by itself. It's a horchata porter.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what it is called right now. And for the last 2 years, they haven't had Milky Way and the horchata porter out at the same time.
Yeah.
But when they do, if you mix Milky Way and that 50-50, it all of a sudden becomes this amazing beer that I love. And I'm like, and it's so weird.
I can see that. Yeah.
So to me, I wish I had a can of the horchata and I could mix them 50-50 with the pumpkin one and see what it does to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
Yeah.
On stout levels, my two favorite stouts are the Yeti, Great Divide Yeti Imperial. It's big picture of Bigfoot on it, and the Bourbon Barrel one's the best. And then the other, there's a company, Super Speedway. I think it's Smith Brewery or something out of San Diego, and they make this really crazy heavy stout that is just out of control, amazing. They only sell it in wine bottles.
Okay.
Big fan of that.
Yeah, they do the 22s or whatever.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since I left LA, which is kind of disappointing. But yeah, so this, the pumpkin spice, it's nice this time of year. I'll have one or
one. Pumpkin beers are just hard.
Yeah. Are you a pumpkin spice person? Are you gonna go to are you a Starbucks pumpkin spice guy?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I love them. Yeah.
Okay.
So I used to go to Starbucks a lot, and every September, I'd be the pumpkin spice is going to come out soon.
You're waiting for it.
Yeah, and then they'd announce it the last 2 weeks
Do they send emails?
Of September.
Is that a thing?
No, I'm not that into Starbucks.
Okay.
But I would just keep my eye out for it, commercials or whatever. And
that's fair.
I would always hold out.
Okay.
I know that because the pumpkin spice latte typically comes out middle of September, end of September.
Sure.
But I am not drinking one until the 1st of October. Like
Okay,
I want,
yeah,
like
I
I don't
see
know,
that.
just like on principle. Like I
Yeah.
don't want it.
Yeah. My wife does. She won't switch to red wine until she has this date in her head where it just happens, and she switches. I don't know.
That's so weird.
She doesn't share it with me, but like at one point, as soon as it starts to get cold, it becomes red
Switches.
wine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, no, stouts. It's good. I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's not really my thing. I went a totally other way though.
You did, and this is
But-
because I'm looking at a Pop-Tart. So tell me about this.
Okay, so this is also a trophy beer. We went 2 for trophy tonight, and it's also another special edition beer, which Trophy does special edition beers all the time. But what this one is, it's called Tart Pop, and it is a raspberry pastry Weiss. So it's kind of like, I mean, it is a Weiss, but it's kind of like a Berliner. That's what it tastes like to me. But basically, it's supposed to be a Weiss brewed with pastry and raspberry. And I mean, it literally has a picture of a Pop-Tart with 2 raspberries.
Same
on
logo,
the front.
same font. Yeah.
Yeah, like very cartoony and shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I got to say, like, if you are into that kind of like Weiss Berliner type fruity sour tart, not as sour as like a sour, there's no salt in it. But if you like that like sour-ish tart, sweet kind of jam, this is a banging.
Yeah.
It's a banger. It's so good. Like
Slightly better than the Gose sour. That was the
tea.
Yeah, the tea
weird
we were drinking.
berry tea, the stone berry tea. Yeah, this is significant. To me, it's significantly better than that. To me, I mean, I am not a huge Gose person, so I'll tell you up front.
Sure.
Chances are I'm not going to love it. But I do love Berliners. I do love Weisses. I like stuff with fruit in it. I don't know. Call me what you want, but this is good. So the first handful of sips that I got out of it was very pastry forward. I mean, it was like I was like biting into a piece of Pop-Tart, but with no filling in it.
Cool.
And then after that, like the pastry would kind of settle down and the raspberry would just start like punching you.
Okay.
And so like the last 3/4 of this beer has been all like just like super tart raspberry with like that little bit of like creamy pastry-ishness to it. But then it's like really tart, really sweet, really like refreshing kind of. But then I'm also getting kind of lit on it. Like it's 5.9%.
Fair. Would you, and here's a weird question.
I'm very into those.
Would you turn this into a float?
Like put soft serve in it? Or like ice cream?
Or ice cream or whatever you choose for a float?
You know, I'd never thought about that, but you probably could.
Yeah. I mean, because I know stouts, like that's a thing. Like,
oh yeah, like stout floats. I forgot that was a thing.
yeah, like this, the pumpkin spice. I would definitely drop a scoop of vanilla into this and just eat it up.
That'd be good. Like some vanilla bean ice cream on top of it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That actually sounds like it would be good.
Yeah.
Like that might turn that into a beer that I would enjoy more.
I could see that.
I would be worried that would turn this into a beer I would enjoy less.
It could ruin it. Yeah.
Because I would think
the
about
lactose
like,
maybe might mess it up.
I don't know. You know, I mean, you never know until you try.
Yeah, but like, now I'm thinking like drop a scoop of ice cream into a PBR, probably messing that PBR up,
Well, PBR doesn't taste like a raspberry Pop-Tart.
That's true. That is true.
I don't know. I could see it with this maybe.
It could work.
Because this isn't, you can definitely tell it's
maybe sherbet.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe like a sherbet or like a
raspberry sherbet.
Yeah, like a
raspberry sherbet
pop.
in the raspberry beer.
That could probably be pretty amazing.
That'd be good.
Yeah. All right. We might have to take care of that.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, moving on from the beers. So as we said, I think towards the end of last episode, we really didn't cover that much conspiracy-y type stuff last time. Really, I think that one was more a little bit of exposition, a little bit of setup.
Definitely.
And now we're really getting to where the conspiracy part starts with not really about COVID, because there's a lot we could talk about with the conspiracy about COVID.
Endless.
And let's not run down that path. But what we can talk about is more the social media portion.
Absolutely. And I think that's a definitely good distinction to make, because you could go down a COVID rabbit hole, as many, many people endlessly have. And it is interesting to talk about all that stuff. But I think what we spent some time setting up last time was some base ground information about where social media companies are, what they're doing, how they're interacting with people, and how it can be sometimes beneficial, sometimes toxic. And the reality that brings it down, and what we're actually discussing this time, is what is the conspiracy there? So if we're asking, is this something done on purpose, or is this something done accidentally for profit? So are companies in the search of profit and in the search of filling their own pockets and making their shareholders happy, are they creating situations that are bad for people? Or is this from the beginning set up as a way to isolate people, to make people more susceptible to things, make people read into things differently? And as soon as we involve something like COVID, where we're all going into lockdown and we're basically at home with our families and on our phones, what's the next step there? What are we looking at?
Right. So I think that's definitely an interesting place to start. So I think we kind of look back a little bit towards the beginning of COVID. There was this really interesting article that came out in Forbes, and the headline of this article is immediately very interesting to me. So it says, so this was published April 6th of 2020. So this was like right about the time lockdown was kind of starting or had just started. It says, Americans are excessively eating, drinking, smoking pot, playing video games, and watching porn while quarantined.
Fair.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, extremely fair. It's like you opened the veil and looked into my life before COVID.
Right. And now we don't have to go to an office for 8 hours. So yes, that is what is happening.
Right. And so the way this article opens is with a tweet. And what this tweet basically says is that if you come out of quarantine without either a new skill, starting something you have put off like a business, or come out of it with more knowledge, then it's not about the quarantine or whatever. It's about the fact that you lack discipline.
Right.
And I've never agreed with sentiments like that.
It's gross.
And I don't agree to it here. And really what this article does is it kind of explores that a little bit, but it gives a bunch of projections about what they thought was going to happen over COVID. And so at the time this article came out, 10 million people had filed for unemployment since the last week or two of March. And they were putting out essentially projections from the Federal Reserve that they thought nearly 50 million people would lose their jobs or file for unemployment by summertime.
Right.
And so now we are clearly past summertime.
A little bit.
And, we didn't really look at those statistics, I don't think, but that can be an interesting thing we could go back and look at. But what they address in here as well is like parents are frantically worried about making rent, paying their mortgages. They're worried about losing jobs. Parents are stressing over working from home, kids being out of school, educating from home, trying to work where their kids are home. Like, how do they manage that? Since I have a very unique perspective on school, that it's not daycare. So if you have a kid, I mean, that sucks. That was your choice. So, but I'm a little cynical there, but, and I get that that's like that's a diverse topic, and I don't really think it's as clear cut as that, but I was just trying,
as someone with a kid, it's fair. It's
as somebody without a kid, I'm just like, I mean, I don't know. So basically the article just kind of goes through and asks these questions about, alcohol sales were up like 55% in the last weeks of March. Buying spirits like spirits, premixed cocktail stuff, increased 75% over the last year, over that time the previous year. Wine sales were up 66%, beer sales were up 42%. Online alcohol sales went up 250% since this time last year.
Probably curbside pickup and whatnot.
So I think this, like marijuana dispensaries, their sales were up 36 million, but up to $36 million worth of legal weed sold just in the month of March in Illinois. Like, I mean, we're talking about massive amounts of people being at home with essentially only work or kids or nothing to do.
Yeah. Well, and with somebody being laid off, I mean, it's kind of clear that like when you lay off a bunch of people, like, that's going to happen. I know every time not every time, it's only happened once that I've gotten laid off. I immediately went home and drank 12 beers. Not 12 at once, but like
same.
over the next couple of days, like it was kind of a depressing moment,
Yeah. What else does this one say? It says, so like Pornhub traffic was up 12%.
12?
12.
I'm kind of surprised it's so low.
Well, I mean, if you think about the number of people accessing those sites, add 12%, it's probably a massive amount of traffic.
Yeah.
12% of a massive amount of traffic.
And you got to probably think
traffic.
too, like if it's like dudes that are home with their wives, like the wives are there. So
or kids or something. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they could know. Well, I don't think there's a way you could know the demographic of that. But yeah, like the article just continues to go into more stuff, past the Pornhub traffic. It talks about in March, consumers streamed 156 billion minutes worth of content from stuff like Netflix, which was up 30% in streaming programming over last year.
Wait, say that again. 156 billion
minutes. 156 billion minutes of content were streamed in the US during the week, just the 1 week of March 16th of 2020.
That was the week of lockdown. So March 16th. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that 1 week.
Wow.
US consumers streamed 156 billion minutes of content, almost twice as much as the same time last year, 30% of which was Netflix, 20% of which was, no, wait, I'm reading this wrong. 30% of that 156 billion minutes was Netflix.
Okay.
Probably because Tiger King came out that week.
Oh, yeah.
20% of it was YouTube.
Okay.
And then the rest was like other stuff. And then the article just kind of goes on to say some other stuff. And that's essentially all it does. But
remember Tiger King lockdown where we were all just kind of like,
that was like
chilling with Joe and like,
Tiger King lockdown was the best because at that point we still thought this is going to be like 2 weeks. It'll be good. We just hang out in our houses. We watch Tiger King. We watched that weird dating show that came out that same time where they go in the pods.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, there's a handful of other shows that came out at the time, and we were still all like hopeful and happy that lockdown was going to be short. COVID wasn't going to be this thing. We were going to kill the virus. We were going to keep the curve flat.
We were making sourdough bread. People were like digging into that stuff.
Yeah. Like there was still this like what we were going to achieve feeling with like looking forward, not looking forward to it, but like with the lockdown coming. And then it raises a question of, I don't think anybody really actually achieved any of that.
I don't know.
I did
nothing as well. I mean, it was like, there it is. It was March. It was like spring, a time of renewal and growth. And we were supposed to be doing these things. And if you care about stuff like, astrology signs, there was all this stuff that was supposed to happen. And we were all supposed to like love life and do these things. And people were like getting like sourdough yeast starters from their buddies. And there were all these news articles about 100-year-old sourdough bread.
Yeah.
And man,
people were like doing crafts and like, I'm going to start a business and learn a thing.
Planting stuff. Like they were out front putting peppers in the ground. And
that did not happen. It didn't persist. I think the unknownness to what came with the lockdown, like, because at first they had pitched it as this whole like 2 weeks to flatten the curve thing.
Yep.
And when we were like a week and a half into it, they pushed it out. And then they were like, all right, it's going to be a month now. And then they pushed it out again. And then they pushed it out again.
And then they just stopped talking about it.
They just stopped saying anything because it had now implicitly become indefinite.
Yeah. And it was pretty fast. It was, I remember, my daughter's in a daycare school and, I was going, and it was whatever the Friday before March 16th was. I was at the school and I was picking my daughter up and I was talking to the head of the school, and her and I were having a discussion. She was like, yeah, I don't know what, Wake County's going to do. And we haven't really had a talk about it. And I had been kind of going deep into COVID research all the way back into like November. And like I had been talking to people about it. And man, you could ask my wife about this. On New Year's Eve, I was telling my wife that there was going to be like serious problems. And so we started going through this stuff, and I was telling her like, listen, it's not going to be 2 weeks. Like this is going to be a big thing. And everybody was so hopeful. They were just like, yeah, let's do this. We're gonna shut it down. We're gonna come out strong. We're gonna write the novel that we always wanted to write. We're gonna do the screenplay. And yeah, it just turned into the same old like crushing American existential crisis that we all suffer through silently day to day.
I know. And it's like weird to look back to, because that week of March 16th, that weekend is marked the last time that my wife and I went out to dinner to eat.
Where'd you go?
We went to the Stanberry.
Oh yeah, the Stanberry. Yeah, that was supposed to be
amazing.
Oh,
dude, it's lit. So we go there for every birthday and anniversary.
Cool.
It's the best steak in Raleigh, in my opinion. It's a great spot, but we go there every time. It's has a great little atmosphere. It's a nice place. So like if I look back and I'm like, if I had to pick a spot to be like the last spot, a fancy night out where we got dressed up, we went out and had a nice dinner together, had some fancy pants drinks, had some, we always have a good time. But that was the last time that we have been out to eat without, for basically up until maybe 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
We went out to eat again. And it was like on a Monday at lunchtime. Nobody was at the place we went. I mean, nobody.
Where did you go this time?
That spot you told me about. That's downtown off of P Street and the station.
Oh, the station. Yeah.
Yeah, we went there. Yeah.
That place is great.
Yeah, we drove by there and I was like, how about we stop and grab some lunch? And of course,
food's
my wife,
good.
we were just like, and it was like stress inducing. Because I was like, do we stop? Do we do it? Do we not do it? I don't know. Like, this seems risky.
The people that work there are a little intense too.
Like, it was weird because we were like, we were wearing our mask to go in. And then we were like, do we leave our mask on? Do we take our mask off? Do we need to put it on?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we ate on their patio. And like, we've eaten out one other time.
Okay.
And that was last weekend. And it was the same thing. We ate outside. Yeah. And it was still weird. It was like, when do we put our masks on? Do we keep,
It's a little weird, yeah.
And there's people all around us not wearing masks.
Sure.
They're supposed to be wearing masks. They're not wearing masks. They're not really enforcing it. Like, I don't know. And it was just it was like nice to be out, but it was stressful at the same time.
It is, yeah. It's very strange. Like we were going to pharmacy where I picked up these fine beverages we're drinking tonight, some of them. And we would go there because they have like a huge open patio area that is kind of like in an area where the wind blows through and stuff. I mean, you've been back there many times.
Yeah.
And we would go back there and we'd sit at the patio table at the far back and sit there and have one or two drinks and leave. But actually drinking at actually eating at a place was totally different. It was, I don't know. We did some to-go stuff, but we didn't really go to places.
Yeah, like it was weird as the COVID lockdown developed because there was all these questions towards the beginning of what's safe and what's not safe.
Right.
And there was a long time there where they didn't have enough information about it. And so now in October, we've essentially accepted touch transmission is not really a thing. Food transmission is not really a thing. The airborne part is where you have to be worried about. And we've kind of accepted this, wear a mask, wash your hands. Everybody has hand sanitizer, like all of this kind of stuff like that. Like stay 6 feet away. Don't breathe towards me. I subconsciously hold my breath as I'm like walking past people, like weird stuff like that. But at that time, it's like we didn't know that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it was like a lot of takeout. And even taking out the takeout, I was like, do I need to wash my hands? Is there COVID on the clamshell of my?
You have to wipe this enchilada down. Like,
it was the same thing with mail. Like we didn't know at the time. So it's like every time we would get mail or packages, like we didn't order anything from Amazon for a while. And when we would get mail, I would be like, do I need to take a Clorox wipe and wipe down the mail? Like, do we leave it outside? Like we were leaving packages in our garage for 3 days, like weird shit. And it's like, we just didn't know. And like,
well, there's no information. There was no guidance, which was a huge problem. There was no actual guidance on that stuff.
Right.
And I think it's interesting because like we did do a decent amount of takeout, and like we would go to the one bottle shop and drink on their little patio. And I think we were I felt like we were being way too nonchalant about it.
Yeah.
And then I would talk to my like sister in Florida who was just like, I was at like TGI Fridays eating inside doing poppers. Like, it's like,
what?
I mean, like eating
no, I know. I mean, like, well, like, why would you be doing that?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you insane, person?
No. And there's some state. I mean, some states, a handful of states, 7 or 8 of them just never locked down. Nothing happened.
I didn't know that.
No, there are like not Tennessee.
Well, like Florida.
Well, Florida, parts of Florida did lock down. We had a weird experience where we drove down to see my wife's stepmom in Florida in New Smyrna Beach, and we were driving through. And when we got to the border, we pulled through, and
the border of Florida, and Georgia,
the Florida Georgia line, and we drove through, and they had everybody kind of pull off to the side, and there was a guy waving everybody through, and the guy in front of us was in a Land Rover with New York plates. And they talked to him for a second and they waved him off, and he went into this tent down the way a little bit where he clearly was taken out of his car and people were having a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And we pulled up and we were in my wife's car.
Was this like the travel ban stuff? Like if you were coming from a certain state or going to a certain state?
It must have been somewhere around there because we
I never experienced that because we didn't travel.
Okay, yeah. So we pulled up after this New York truck that was taken off to another space.
Okay.
And they asked where we were from, and we said North Carolina, and they just waved us through without even blinking. Like just go on through.
But New York,
they sent them over into another tent and had some words with them.
Yeah. So, well, they had horrible.
It was when it was when New York was messed up. Like,
okay.
There were problems. So it was interesting to see how Florida. I mean, I grew up in Florida. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale since I was 5 years old. So I know all the problems in Florida. It's not like I have any illusions that Florida was a great
superhero
place.
You're familiar with.
Exactly. So it's not like I have any illusions. So to see them pull somebody from New York aside and be like, "Hey, buddy, wait a minute," But yeah, I mean, it was bizarre to watch all of that, and then on top of it, to like, what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to be at? And that kind of takes us down a different side road of like just the social media part where, during all of that stuff where we had no information, we're sitting there just endlessly scrolling our phones and trying to figure out what we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Right. It was like this was the weird, comfortable thing that was still normal.
And I mean, before COVID, our phones were a pacifier at best anyways, like we always had them up until we go to bed and all that stuff. And now it's not only your source of information, but your source of existential dread, so you have your phone in front of you and every piece of nightmare information that's coming through is coming through your phone, because most of us have cut the cable. So we have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon on our big TVs
and on our phones,
but you don't have like ABC. You're not watching 60 Minutes every week.
No.
So it's left to like what's on your social media. So like you're getting the opinions of 10,000 people intermixed with news articles, and it's just this endless scroll, which has been dubbed doom scrolling, and so people found themselves, going back to March, people found themselves laying in bed, eyes wide open, insomnia out of control, just wildly staring at their phone, looking at like the numbers climb and climb and climb and not know what to do about it because you're completely impotent because you have no power in that situation. And two, you're completely unprepared for something of that scale. Nobody expects the Spanish flu or World War I, something of this massive scale to be happening.
Right. And so, there's definitely the question to be asked of doom scrolling and the way social media was essentially designed. And the question we asked at the beginning is, was it on purpose? Was it an accident? Is it for profit? Is it not? Was already a thing before COVID. And
Absolutely.
Then all of a sudden there's all of this stress, there's this anxiety, there's the unknown happening. You don't know if you can keep your job or not. Like what's going on with school? What's going on with the government? Where's my money from that terrible check that took forever?
Yeah.
Where's the second one? You know what I mean? Like there's all this stuff that we just don't know and everything's unstable and seems horrible. And so like the mental health effects coming out of that like situation of the unknown and lockdown, and now all of a sudden we're working from home. Now all of a sudden you're essentially segregated from everything you know about what normal life is, and this like device in your hand that is questionably designed to force you to stare at it and continue to be on it forever,
right,
is now the only thing that feels normal. And statistically people are driving themselves into it hard.
Yeah, it's designed to feel normal and comforting, but at the same time, it's driving a knife into your side. It's this device that provides you with your diaper, but at the same time, closes its hands around your throat, because like you're sitting there getting every piece of information that makes you more scared, more upset, more anxious is coming through the phone. But at the same time, you can't put it down because that's where your information is coming from.
Right. And so like between March and May, Harris Poll conducted a survey and found that roughly 50% of US adults were using social media more. It's an undefined amount of more, but more since the outbreak began.
Yeah.
And so we already knew, I think from talking through the statistics of last episode, that usage is high.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when you're in a situation like this, I mean, more being undefined like this, but half of people are using it more. That seems low to me.
It does. And, that was also from early May.
Right.
And that was months. I mean, early May.
The real depression didn't set in until July.
Early May is 1965. Like it's a whole nother planet at this point,
Yeah.
And, early May, we were still thinking like we're going to see Tenet in the theaters. Early May, we were still thinking that like there'd be a way to like go to a family wedding, you know? And it's funny because the way our brains have changed. I distinctly remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine whose sister was getting married in October.
Yeah.
And we had the conversation in May, and he was talking about how he didn't think it was going to happen and it was this bizarre thing. And, obviously now there's no wedding going to be happening and you don't even think about it. But I recently saw on Instagram somebody I worked with in Los Angeles. Their family had a 200-person wedding in Nashville with no masks in sight. And it was this whole thing that just happened like 5 days ago. And seeing that gives me this, like, I got anxiety looking at the photos.
Right.
Thinking, oh God, what are they doing?
Yeah, I've had the same thing, like seeing people on my Instagram being at weddings or having weddings or whatever. And like, I feel like most people have had some level of like this happening around them.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the dichotomy for sure, because like, so I had a family member pass away in the middle of COVID, which we're still in the middle, but so earlier in COVID.
Yeah.
And it was just this whole thing because she was in Texas at the time that she passed away. She had to, do what you do with dead bodies and then come back here.
Yeah.
And we had to go to Virginia and hold a funeral.
Right.
And then around that same time, another family member that I don't know from my wife's side of the family also passed away. And we didn't go to that one, but we heard what it was like. And it was 100% different than the funeral that we went to.
Yeah.
So the one that we went to, it was direct family and like close friends only. Everybody was wearing masks. Nobody sit in the little tent.
Yeah.
Like it was very short. We didn't have like a party after, like none of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was just like, and unfortunately,
that's sad.
That's not the funeral I know that this person would have wanted, but that's kind of what everybody felt like had to be done. And then the dichotomy on the other side was there was this other funeral. And I mean, there was 200 people there. It was 3 hours long. Nobody was wearing masks. Everybody was hugging. And like, it was completely insane.
Well, and that brings a whole nother point is one, people are sick of it. Like people don't want to not have the version where we get to have a big meeting and do all that stuff. Like, and that's, and that's a problem. That's sad. But then on the flip side, we also, as human beings, we look at those situations where there's 200 people without masks having a wedding or a funeral or something along those lines. And people like you or I who are like concerned about it, and we have reasons why our family needs to stay healthy. We look at that and we're kind of like on some level, we're scared of it a little.
Right. Because I mean, I would love to do that.
I same. Like I'd love to go to like Asheville right now and spend the day going from brewery to brewery and just hanging out. And like the fact that I can't is like very scary. But the fact that like also I look at how other people are doing those things and just, throwing caution to the wind. It's really interesting how that alters your brain of where a year ago I would have looked at a 200-person wedding and rolled my eyes and been like, that looks boring.
Right.
Now I'm like, Jesus, I wish I could go to a 200.
Sounds like a party.
Yeah. It's completely changed my perception of social gatherings.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's weird. Like, I don't want to jump too far into the weeds of like this COVID specific conspiracy theory type stuff. But where we are now, we're not that far away from the election.
No.
And so it somewhat raises a little bit of that question as we're talking about stuff like this. And again, I don't want to get too far down this path, but there's this entire time been this whole, culture of people denying that the virus exists, trying to cling to the statistics that there's a 0.006% death rate if you look at it on the aggregate. And the only reason, it looks like the United States has more cases is because we're testing more. So because we're testing more, you know what I mean? And that kind of additional data, of course, it's going to look like we're testing more.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they're using all this stuff as like to deny the danger kind of aspect to it. And, at the same time, there's all these people that are like, the virus is fake. I'm not wearing a mask. You're stepping on my rights by that, which is a whole other thing to talk about. And then the part where there's the question that I've legitimately questioned is, depending on who wins this election, is the COVID threat going to magically disappear and just fall into the, into the ether, the mist of media, and we're never going to hear about it again, like the, giant death wasps or whatever they were that were in Oregon.
Hornets. Yeah.
I mean, when's the last time you heard about that?
Just recently, apparently in Washington, they killed a giant gathering of them like 3 days ago.
I mean, that's good, but like, they were saying,
but your point is 100% true.
Attack of the Killer Bees was going to be this whole thing. And then all of a sudden it disappears. And, through media and social media and the way that it has been changing over the last number of years, we've seen this exact same thing.
Yeah.
Some huge thing will pop up. It'll blow through the internet.
It's true.
And then a week later it'll be gone. And, and that's happened so many times now with the way that information spreads through social media, which I think we're going to talk a little bit more about later.
Yeah. Very much
this question of, will COVID magically disappear after the election?
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, it's a real serious question.
Yeah. And I can see that question. And it's interesting because, I have these moments where I think the same thing. And I honestly feel like, no, it's not going to be a situation where it just vanishes. Because I
think like 2 days ago, the White House came out and claimed that the COVID threat was over.
Right, exactly.
Like officially claimed.
Yeah,
COVID threat's over.
They said but today, as we're recording this, it was the largest number of new cases in the country ever.
Yeah, every day is the largest number of new cases.
Well, I mean, it went down for a while, but yeah, like recently, the past couple of days have been very, very high, and deaths have been up through the roof.
Yeah, and of course, we're staring at going back to school 6 days. Having children back in school in person.
Yeah,
6 days after the election, and there's no plan. There's no PPEs. There's nothing.
Right, exactly. And it's terrifying, because it creates a situation where I understand what you're saying, where like maybe after the election, this is just going to like lift, because there's a pressure cooker situation leading up to, it feels like there's a pressure cooker situation leading up to the election where we put
for sure
all of our meat and all of our vegetables into this pressure cooker and turn it up, because we know the higher the pressure is, the faster it'll cook and the faster people will go vote. And that creates a sense of urgency, because I've been in marketing for 25 years, and the number one rule is create a sense of urgency.
Right.
If people don't think that there's a reason for them to buy something right at that moment, they're not going to buy something.
Right.
That's why if you drive around Los Angeles, you're going to see 500 billboards up for whatever movie's coming out that week, because they're going to make it seem like it's the biggest event coming out.
Yeah. Well, let's circle back to this, because we're going to talk about a lot more of this kind of stuff later in the show. So let's talk a little bit about, to kind of circle back to the social media use portion and how it's changed during COVID.
Yeah.
How work from home has changed the landscape for use.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah. So for me personally, work from home wasn't a huge change, because I worked from home before this all happened. I work for a company that's based in Los Angeles. And so I've been working from home for a year before all of this happened. But I directly saw my wife, who worked for a nonprofit, and they had an office in Durham, and it was an office you had to go to every day. And I watched how that turned up, and then they came from home and watched them on Zoom calls all day, and it was a massive change for her. It was very different.
Yeah, like I've had an extremely similar experience. So I work for a company that was based in Texas. Before that, it was based in Illinois, and I've been working home for 8 years.
Wow.
In 6 weeks, it'll be 8 years.
Wow.
That I've been working from home, and so to me, like, I definitely didn't feel a lot of the impact that other people felt, where magically they were working from home. It was their first time, and they were having to figure out how to deal with the mental stress of working from home. And like at first, when I started working from home, of course, I had the choice. So I was in a very different place because going into the office was extremely depressing. Nobody was there. I was the only person. It was weird. So I chose to start working from home, and my manager was really cool about it. And at first I was really pumped because I was like, oh, I don't have to be in the office anymore. I don't have to go anywhere. I can work longer. I can work harder, and I don't have to leave. I don't have to deal with traffic. My gas expenses are lower, whatever. But the further you get into work from home past when you make that choice, if you have the choice, it immediately becomes this weird balancing act of mental gymnastics.
100%.
Where you can all of a sudden snap out of it one day and be like, when's the last time I left the house?
Right.
When's the last time I wore pants?
It's very true. Yeah.
And so there was definitely this like mental gymnastics that I've been playing for the last 8 years, where I'm like, I can legitimately not leave the house for an entire week.
Yeah.
And, whatever. And so I had to start making myself leave the house, and like I would go to the gym in the morning on purpose as a way to get out.
Yep.
And have that be my time when I get out. It was also my time to go to the grocery store, run errands and stuff like that before work, and then come home and work all day. And, the biggest change that I saw with COVID was, two things. First, all the gyms shut down.
Sure. Yeah.
I was having some other back pain problems at the time, so like I wasn't really going to the gym anyway, but all of a sudden it wasn't that my choice to leave the house was gone.
Yeah.
So even if I did want to leave the house to get out of the house to change the scenery, now I couldn't.
Right.
And I already spend all of my time here. And so that was like a big mental gymnastics thing that my head was playing and I was having to deal with. And then on top of that, my wife is a school teacher, and, she went on a track out and then just never went back.
Yeah.
And she's been home this entire time. You know what I mean? And then now all of a sudden we're dealing with the stress of what's going to happen when she goes back to school. And that's a whole other conversation to have. And it's a whole dumpster fire. But yeah, like I can see how the mental strain of magically being forced to work from home when you've never had to do it. You don't have the desk and the chair and the things set up in your office ready, and you're having a hard time working. Your kids are yelling in the back. You know what I mean? And dealing with all of that, and I think there was a statistic we talked about last show where it's like people pay attention to content or change content between their computer, their phone, or whatever they're looking at every 19 seconds or something like that. So you throw in the mental stress, and all of a sudden you're at home. So there's nobody looking over your shoulder, making sure you're working. You're dealing with the mental gymnastics of work from home, and you're changing content every 19 seconds. And now you have this huge opportunity to stare at your phone.
Yeah. With no one looking over your shoulder.
Right. With no one checking behind you.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. It's crazy because, myself, I was working from home, and I had a pretty good schedule set up where I would get up, walk my daughter to school, come home, and then get in my car, drive over, sit at a coffee shop for 2 hours. And since my office was on the West Coast, I had a 3-hour jump start on everybody in that office. So I would bang out all the emails that I needed to do for the day, not for the day, but like catch up on
started.
Yeah, exactly. And I would like blast them with stuff that I had to be working on for the day. So like I would preload everything. And then I would go home, and then I would meal prep, and then go to the gym and do all this different stuff.
Well, that sounds like such a nice schedule.
It was amazing. And then all of a sudden COVID hit, and like wife was home, kid was home, no choice in any of it.
Can't go anywhere. Can't do anything.
I mean, I have a 2-year-old in the house, so there's literally nothing to be done.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it took it took my wife and I like a lot of back and forth and like not arguing, but just like
you had to figure out how to make it work.
Negotiating. Yeah.
Where essentially negotiating.
What we eventually found that worked was, because my office was in Los Angeles, I would stay with my daughter until lunchtime when she had to go down for a nap. And then after nap, my wife would take over with my daughter and I would be able to work after nap time. So she would work in the morning and I would take care of the kid. And then I would work in the afternoon. She would take care of the kid.
Okay.
And it was the only thing that worked. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to pull that off. And it turned into a situation where we were only working like 5 hours a day, you know, but it was what we had to do, you know?
Yeah. One of the things that's been kind of tough for me is like, I'm one of those people that's very like retrospective and looks back and it's like, oh, you should have made a different decision. Yeah. And so now it's weird because if you're a person who worked from home before COVID,
yeah,
and you had a boss who was at the very least any kind of flexible,
yeah,
most companies that support work from home really don't care where you're working from.
Yeah,
they just care that you're getting your work done, and they have ways to track productivity and stuff like that. But with the job that I do, I could very easily work from anywhere.
Yeah.
I've worked from the beach before. I've worked from bars before. I've worked from the airport. I've worked
which is amazing.
I've worked from tons of places.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a thing that I did a lot. And a number of my other peers did do it a lot. They would like get up, work from home around breakfast. They'd head into the office like mid-morning. They'd work, from the office for a while, do some lunch, work from the office a little longer, head to the bar in the afternoon, work from the bar, whatever. They would like change their scenery. And I just never really jumped on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
I would wake up early enough to like take a shower, do some stuff. Or, when I was going to the gym, I'd get up, I'd go to the gym, I do all that kind of stuff. I come home, but then I would just be at my desk at home all day. And now I look back, I'm like, should I have done more of that? Should I have gone to the bar? Should I have gone?
Are you a slog worker or are you like a burst worker? Like slog worker, do you have to be sitting at your desk for like 8 hours straight and just kind of like bang stuff out? Or are you a burst worker where you kind of like let stuff build up and then blow it out for 2 hours straight and then just like not worry about it for a while? Or are you some hybrid?
It kind of, it's definitely some kind of hybrid of that. Because like the job that I do, it has its like ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's slow. It's really unpredictable when it's going to be busy and when it's going to be slow. So it's tough. Like I have my email on my phone. I check it when I have doctors.
That makes sense for your field. Yeah.
And so like within the technology industry, it's kind of hard to know because I could get a phone call and 2 minutes later I need to be looking at a 50,000 line spreadsheet. So it's like, or I could spend the entire day just answering emails on my phone. And it's just very simple back and forth email type questions.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And so that's the part where that always kind of kept me from doing that. But now I'm like, I could have done it. You know what I mean? I could have made it work and I didn't. But now with the way it is and being stuck at home and stuff, I don't know. I just kind of think about that. I toy with that kind of stuff in my head. Yeah. Like I think through scenarios a lot.
I've been really trying to be more of like a burst worker where, but the difference is I know what I'm working on throughout the day. Like I make my schedule the day before, so I know what I have to knock out. And so I'll like really schedule heavy work times and then schedule times where I'm not doing anything, which is really helpful for me at least,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I can essentially see, I guess from our perspectives, it's clear the, mental health strain of working from home. And I can see how difficult that would be if you were kind of forced into it unwillingly by this mysterious disease that's killing everybody everywhere.
Sure.
So let's look a little bit more at the like statistics of mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when you break it down, I mean, even from social media beforehand, before all of COVID, when you look at just things like depressive symptoms and all these other things, if you look at just with teen girls, after nearly 2 decades in decline, high depressive symptoms for 13 to 18-year-old teen girls rose by 65% between 2010 and 2017. So obviously way before COVID. And these things were building up before that. And I mean, I know for me personally, if I look back at that time frame, going back to 2010, say 2009, when I was really starting to think about that stuff, I can definitely see a path of increased depression based on how like social media came into my life.
Yeah.
And even using it because, I mean, for me, my path of social media was through work initially because I was already like an adult working in the world. And I still even see that coming through and seeing how I interacted with people, how all that stuff happened. I can see all that stuff, So what about for you, kind of thinking back to 2010 to 2017?
Yeah. I mean, so for me, 2010 is the year I graduated from college.
Okay.
And that was basically right in the midst of I think it was late Bush, early Obama period. 2010 was early Obama.
Yeah, early Obama.
But that was the last, that was like the economic downturn, quote unquote.
It was kind of the end of it. It was
and so graduating in 2010 from college was a horrible time to graduate.
Oh, yeah.
Like I didn't find a permanent job for 2 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And I did good in college, you know what I mean? And I have a weird degree. So it's like, I should have been able to find something somewhere and there were just no jobs. So like to me, that's more what I was looking at that time. And I think social media applications for phone launched in 2009.
Yeah.
And so I know that really kind of seemed like the beginning, or I know what's that documentary, The Social Dilemma?
Yeah.
It essentially tried to make that link that's where the downturn started. And so like there's this really interesting statistic as well, where if you look at the number of teenage girls out of 100,000 in the US who are admitted to a hospital every year because they either cut themselves or otherwise harm themselves, that number has increased 62% for 15 to 19-year-olds and 190% for 10 to 14-year-olds since 2009.
Yeah.
And then I think there's another statistic about that's similar about the suicide rate for those same groups.
Right.
And it's like 60% and 160% or something like that, where it's that it's like that same group of girls over the same time period, but the suicide rate.
Right. Exactly.
And it's just interesting to think, it's hard to really make a direct connection to that. 2009 is when social media launched for applications for phone, and that's when all of a sudden the self-mutilation and suicide rates for girls in like early teen and high school age just started exploding for no apparent reason.
Off the charts. Yeah. And I mean, it's, those things were there before, like people were self-harming and cutting and all these things. And that went back, 100 years, but it really, really took off then. And, even the guy who basically was the director of monetization for Facebook said, it's plain as day to me, these services are killing people and causing people to kill themselves. And so,
and that's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
But I could see it like if you think about bullying over social media or anything like that. And young people are extremely susceptible to that kind of thing. And then, it's this idea like our brains have not developed over time the same amount in proportion to how technology has developed. And it's this question of like, our brains are developed to care about what our tribe thinks of us and not what 10,000 people on the internet think of us. Absolutely. So how are we supposed to deal with that idea of everybody else around me is getting likes and I'm not getting likes?
Yeah.
Or I post a picture and a bunch of people like it. Some people comment on it. Some person comes says, you're an ugly fat piece of shit. You should kill yourself. And then you do.
Right.
And there's been a bunch of legal ramifications for that as well. Like, I mean, you can be indicted for essentially, I can't remember what the crime is, but basically telling somebody to kill themselves and they do. If you do that in person,
like a verified version of manslaughter.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can essentially be convicted of manslaughter for telling somebody to kill themselves over the internet, and then they do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's amazing, going back, it's when I was in high school, when I was a freshman, I was bullied a lot. Like I was a major like target for kids.
Okay.
I was extremely obese. I was a nerdy kid. I read 3 books a week and did nothing but like all I did was like paint and read. That was
God,
all I did.
You were a nerd.
I was a major nerd. Like you don't even know. And that was all the way up until I was about 15. And I cannot even imagine how bad it would have been if I had to navigate social media in that time frame too, because
Right.
I was reading weird books that like made me think different things, and like I would examine those thoughts in my head, and if I was putting that stuff out in social media, and
Yeah, because as a kid you would.
right, of course I would.
Why wouldn't you say, I read this weird book and I'm thinking these weird
exactly
thoughts? And then somebody comes back because you're a fucking psycho. Like,
right.
Like
look at Jaden Smith, who he's like, eyes are windows to the mirrors of the soul. He like, he writes this weird stuff that like, it's based in these like, I'm not going to hate on Jaden Smith because he's writing stuff that's based in these weird psychological theories that he's reading. But, Perez Hilton reads it and suddenly says like, who the F is this kid writing this weird stuff, and tears it apart. And that's no different than like the basic bullying that would be happening for any kid who's a freshman in high school in Poughkeepsie, you know?
Except now the bullier is behind a keyboard and can say anything without the risk of you happening to punch them in the face.
Well,
they can say significantly more brutal stuff on a, on a higher frequency with more touch, with more reach, than they can during the limited amount of time you were at school. Cause like,
and they can be anonymous.
Right. Can they be anonymous?
Well, I mean, pretty much. Like you can just have some random Instagram handle.
Yeah, you could have like a fake Facebook or something.
But like on top of that is like, even, we're not back in the days where like you have to learn how to use Usenet or like get a special like password to get an email account or anything. Like the same kids that would have beat the shit out of me when I was a freshman in high school are the same kids that can go on your Instagram today in 2020 with no barrier of entry and talk shit about you and make your life hell,
Yeah.
So there's nothing stopping those same dudes that could kick your butt. There's nothing stopping them from harassing you on Instagram and then the next morning went to school punching you in the face.
Right. Yeah.
It's everybody's got the same iPhone.
Yeah. Because there was this time where you would go to school and if you got bullied, whatever, and when you got home, you were at home. It was this safe spot or whatever. But now it's not totally unsafe because you have this very helpful yet very dangerous thing in your hand that is, blasting news and Instagram garbage at you and Facebook garbage at you, 24/7. And also people talking shit to you and about you. And it's not like it stops with kids either. The internet can be such a great place for communities to come together and do stuff and coordinate stuff and whatever. Like my wife is in this plant group and she's constantly trading plants, getting free plants, selling plants, doing plant stuff.
That's crazy.
Advising people about plants, like all of this ridiculousness. But then there's all of these communities across Facebook and Reddit and whatever that are easily, the most unfettered toxic environments on the planet where people just are horrible to each other. And especially with like the election coming up and the political landscape, I mean, people just don't give a shit about what they say or do to other people.
No, the pressure cooker keeps turning up,
Yeah.
There's nothing to stop it.
100%.
Yeah. And it's, the cyberbullying period is completely out of control. It picks up and picks up and picks up. And it's not just like, young boys, young girls, it's everybody across the spectrum is experiencing this. And it creates a weird thing where people are not taking the risks that they should. When I was 15 years old, I had a chance to, what basically happened was if I wanted to get my license, I had to basically fix this car that was dragged up to my driveway. It was 71 Chevelle. And I had to put a motor in it and fix it, or else I couldn't take a driver's test because that was how I would get my license.
Dad just bought me a Bronco.
I would love to have a Bronco,
but sick truck.
So essentially I had to like yank a motor out of an RV and a transmission and put it in the Chevelle and fix it up. And like, that was what I drove to the DMV test. And, that was 1992, and so that kind of stuff doesn't happen anymore. You know, kids these days are not getting their driver's license, even though they live in the middle of nowhere. They have no way to get around.
They're not engaging with other people. They're not having romantic relationships.
They're just
at such a rate. And like, that's crazy to me because like I look back and I definitely don't view myself as somebody who was like popular. I was not like a popular dude.
Right.
But I was a successful competitive hockey player. I had friends. I had a lot of, you know, general acquaintances and friends and stuff like that. And I never really saw myself as being that like too successful with any one friend, or I didn't really have girlfriends because I was out playing hockey all the time. But then I look back and I went to at least one prom every single year that I was in high school. And I went to 4 proms my senior year.
So I went to 0 proms.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That's terrible. I thought it was such fun, but like, I think back now and like, if I had, and like at the time I had like an Altel flip phone that you could only text on using that, like, you know, where you had to push the one button multiple times to like make letters and stuff. But like, how much more difficult would that, you know, kind of thing have been when there was social media all around?
Yeah.
And really like, I was in a unique position because I can't remember, it was like 2005 or 2006 when MySpace launched in 2004.
Yeah.
Facebook launched in 2005, and then Facebook opened up to past college to and high schools with email addresses in 2006.
Right.
And so my senior year, I had a Facebook, but my sophomore and junior years, and senior year, I had a MySpace.
Yeah. And
so like it was starting to come along, but we were so new at it, and we were still so hooked to AOL.
Yeah.
That we had kind of figured that talking to each other platform out where it was instant.
Yeah.
But we hadn't really entirely figured out these like, you know, early MySpace and Facebook platforms, and they definitely were not nearly as flexible and toxic as they are now with stuff like the like button and getting hearts, you know, likes on your Instagram posts and stuff like that. And it's interesting now that you can like look back at some of these statistics since like, you know, after they added the like button to Facebook and when Instagram launched and it had the like thing, that, you know, this whole system of likes kind of like keeps you attracted. It's part of that like, the like casino mentality that I think we talked about last time, where it's like that instant gratification of like throwing a post up and then like seeing how many likes you get, and you get the most likes at the beginning and then it starts to like taper off. But like there's very interesting, these aren't really statistics, but like as an example, the number of likes on a celebrity Instagram account can significantly change the way you see yourself. And experimental studies showed that when women were exposed to different celebrity Instagram images, their rating of their own appearance dropped in a direct proportion to the number of likes attached to the image that they were looking at.
Right.
And that's just crazy to me. And like to kind of build on that a little bit, the more time you spend on Instagram, the more likely you are to suffer from an eating disorder like anorexia.
Yeah. And put it in this context of where look back at, you know, young girls in the 80s and 90s, where did they see that stuff? Magazines,
billboards, TV.
So they would go to the grocery store and they would see it, you know, in that slot as you're going to the checkout. All that stuff would be in your face to a certain level. Now imagine today where that in your face is in the palm of your hand 24/7. There's no escaping it, you know. And not only are you locked into what's going on with the influencers and the celebrities, all of your friends are going through that too and putting it in your face also. There's zero escape for that.
Right. Like there's a new show on Netflix that I've been watching that's pretty funny. It has a actor in it that I really like to follow his stuff, Walton Goggins.
Oh yeah.
He's so funny
awesome
to me. He was in Django Unchained, I think.
Yeah.
And he's been in a bunch of other stuff, but I really just like love the way that he acts. So that's what attracted me to the show. But basically in the show, he is a single dad who's a widower, and he has these 2 like young middle school, early high school age daughters. And there's this one scene that really kind of jumped out to me as we were preparing for this episode and the last episode, where the one daughter keeps like acting out and like leaving, and he doesn't know where she is, and she keeps kind of like disappearing and not communicating with him and stuff. And then her bike like breaks down somewhere, and she was supposed to be at home, and so she calls him to come get her. And he shows up and he's like, "What are you doing? Why are you out here not telling me where you are? I'm supposed to know where you are. Like, that's the rule." And she was like, "I'm surfing for walls." And he was like, "What is that?" And she was like, she just points this giant wall with a mural on it where people go to stop to take selfies and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, "I'm riding my bike around town getting selfies at all of these walls with murals on them because the other girls in my school are doing it. They're getting likes, and I don't know why, but I want likes too."
Yeah.
And, he ended up, saying something very sweet and profound to her, and then driving her around to the walls to get pictures and stuff. But that to me is just like, I mean, it's a little fantastical or whatever, but like that shit happens.
It's a fun version of it, but like break that down into trying to look cool and like drinking with your friends and doing these different things,
Yeah. Or like all my friends are doing X, I want to do X. But now it's turned into all my friends are posting nudes and I want to, or I want to send, naked text messages, or I want an OnlyFans, or I wanted to get likes on my Facebook, or, I want to do whatever it takes to get all of this cheap, vague, fleeting, external recognition via a button that takes 1,000th of a microsecond of brain impulse to decide to click it.
Yeah. And I mean, you brought
ridiculous.
up OnlyFans. There's money there too now.
Yeah.
Not now. There always has been, but.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about that last time too, where OnlyFans like totally changed the game for porn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so like now all these people are starting businesses there too, and they're leveraging stuff like Instagram.
Yeah.
To, and especially with COVID,
to drive traffic,
with people needing money and not having jobs and whatever, trying to like expand their portfolio into not only do I do X, but I also post pictures of my feet for money on OnlyFans or whatever it is that they do. And to me, what this is really doing as a whole, if you think about it, is it's taking that like fragility of children, because I can remember being in that spot and not knowing what to do, not knowing how to talk to girls, just feeling very unsure of myself as I was trying to figure out who I was. And these things are taking that fragility and creating a very clear and easy to utilize pathway to essentially exploit the shit out of that.
Yeah.
And the more insecure and unsure these kids and, any people, even adults, are about themselves, the more likely they are to get on these platforms and do more and look more and watch more and post more and, and search for this, totally, unrealistic, unachievable level of internet stardom in the interest of somebody clicking on the like button.
Well, I think the insecurity is being just like weaponized and monetized across the board.
Absolutely.
People are coming in and they're basically laying out, if you have a fear of this, there's a product for that. If you have a fear of this, there's a product for that. So they go through and they basically mine what you're scared of and then use their own algorithms and their own studies to feed that back to you in a way that'll make you click and purchase.
Yeah, like I don't remember if we talked about this last time, but there's a statistic that shows, or it's not really a statistic, but at some point there was an internal report that came out of Facebook that shows that they track 29,000 individual data points about every person that uses the platform. So, I mean, you are giving them everything that they would ever want to know about you for free. They're analyzing that data and they're feeding it back to you in a way that is, showing you the next video and showing you the next ad and showing you the next post that is, more likely to keep you going. And that's where that whole doom scrolling thing comes in.
Absolutely.
And, it's just really interesting. Like if we kind of circle back, there's a quote that I'm going to read. So Gen Zs, people born after around 1996, it's the first generation that started on social media in middle school. So this would be one generation behind me because I started in high school. It's a whole generation of more anxious, more fragile, and more depressed young people. They're less comfortable taking risks. The rates, and we talked about this earlier, the rates in
Yeah.
which they're getting driver's licenses is dropping. The number of people who's ever been on a date or had a romantic relationship is dropping drastically. So, I mean, I think if we are trying to put two and two together to show that, you know, when social media launched, there were very clear changes as that was starting to develop.
Absolutely.
Once it came out for mobile, we saw very clear changes in that. And now, if we're looking back at these Gen Zs as the very first group of people to have it in middle school, and they, and now our next generation are growing up with it. They are literally coming out of the crib with Facebook, with parents with their children on Facebook, posting pictures of them, and then they get old enough to have their own Facebook. And I think we're going to see in the future a whole other wave of these kind of statistics looking back at,
absolutely,
kids having too much screen time and not developing
it's already
properly
there.
and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's already happening. Yeah.
And we're already starting to see those statistics, but it'll be interesting and not interesting. It'll probably be very depressing and sad to look back and see, these kids who grew up, with their parent being like, oh, I'm just sick of you crying here. Watch a, Flip Flubs video on my phone for 9 hours instead of paying attention to them or teaching them something or doing whatever. And then watching how those kids progress through our fully digitized and technological, culture.
Yeah.
To where, they have phones when they're in elementary school. They probably have, they have their Facebook accounts and they grow up even in elementary school, I assume, bullying each other and doing everything that we've been talking about.
Yeah. I mean, the standard stuff, it's, I know kids who are, friends of the family and stuff like that, that are, 7, 8 years old who have full phones with cell phone access, who can make calls and have data plans and all that stuff at 6, 7 years old, and sometimes a little younger, sometimes a little older.
And like I didn't get a phone until I got my driver's license, and that's because my parents wanted me to be able to call them in case anything happened,
which makes sense. Yeah.
But like I would go home and do homework and play video games and go to hockey practice and whatever. And now these kids, and I don't have the data points in front of me, but these kids are going home and even outside of doing homework, which now is on the computer, right? There's this, there's Google Classroom, there's Power School, there's all these applications.
It's all right there,
like I know, like probably for us, like you had to wait till you got your report card, or you had to go ask your teacher, where am I on my grades? You had to go check with them. It was written down. They like kept it in Excel sheets and shit.
Yeah.
And now like it's been empowering for the parents in some aspect where like they can log into Power School and see,
you can see every test.
Yeah. And you can see every test. It basically is live updating your kids' grades on the internet and whatever. But like all of this information is now there. And I can't remember what the point I was trying to make was at this point, but it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, it's wild. And it's funny is when you were talking about like when you got your first phone and stuff, my first instinct was like, I'm Gen X. I mean, I'm 10 years older than you. My first instinct was like, I'm Gen X and I didn't get a phone until I bought my own phone. Like I was in college. And like, that's a real thing where like people who are Gen X or boomers or whatnot, they're empowered to kind of make fun of you for like where you came in on the grid, and it creates this situation where it's us versus them, where they're like, well, I had Prodigy and I had AOL and I had and like, you're supposed to argue about that stuff, but like,
I don't think it's that important now.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're also up to our necks that it doesn't matter anymore,
Yeah. I mean, that's a really easy connection to make over to the political landscape. It's so polarized. And like I tell people, like, to me, it doesn't really matter what, political affiliation you say you subscribe to. I would almost guarantee if you take most people and you break it down to the issue, to an issue on issue level, you could have an intelligent, respectful conversation with that person and probably figure out whether you think you're a super liberal Democrat or you think you're an ultra conservative. If you really break it down to the issue and have a conversation about it, I would bet money most people are pretty close on most things. It's just this
Yeah.
ultra polarized, ultra us versus you. If the voting system is now not for your guy, it's against the other guy.
Yeah.
It's just created this landscape, and social media has just accelerated that, and 24-hour news media has just accelerated that in this like unprecedented way where we are the most divided now we've ever been.
And I agree. I totally agree with that because, I grew up in Florida with all the Florida things. I'm pretty liberal, but I grew up in a very conservative family. I've owned guns my whole life. I grew up as a gun-toting liberal, and which is weird enough as it is. And then
right.
And then I moved to Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, I was basically the most conservative guy in Los Angeles. But I mean, I'm very far on the left wing, but in where I found myself, I was pretty conservative. And then here in Raleigh, I'm pretty much in the center. And it's really funny because you have all these different left and right wing and all these different things. And at the end of the day, like a lot of that stuff is kind of silly and superfluous because it basically makes a situation where people are fighting for the left wing versus the right wing, and they're looking at what they see on not necessarily the news media every day, but on different news sites, where once you start getting into the deep levels of the internet, you start seeing all these things bubbling up that are very partisan one side or the other. And people start building up these thoughts in their head of like where they're left on the left wing or the right wing. And that's where we start building these echo chambers, which has been one of the worst things that have come out of the internet.
Yeah.
Is, the internet was originally supposed to be a place where we all got along,
come together and learn everything, and all the
100%.
all the intelligence for all of humanity is stored in this one wonderful place where we can all access it.
Exactly. But no, what we did was we created steel boxes where we threw all of our personal thoughts and prejudices into, and then we locked ourselves into those steel boxes once we put everything in there. And all that is done is given a 100% marketing target for people who want to push a certain agenda, because what they realize is they have people stuck into these one spaces, and they know that all they have to do is market this certain sort of thing into that echo chamber, and those people will buy it,
Right.
And you look at it on, Facebook has put out all these, I mean, Facebook didn't do it, but all these other companies have put out these reports about how Facebook, older Republicans are more likely to fall for these scams, and there's all these different things. And so they put out these ideas where I mean, if you fall into a zone where all you're hearing is what you want to hear, chances are you're going to fall for the scams that are coming out of that.
Exactly.
And it happens on both sides. This isn't me saying both sides.
I mean, it's 100% true. And I think that this is where the conspiracy starts to come in. Because if you think about that point I said earlier, where we talk about, if we're talking about Facebook specifically, right? They track 29,000 different data points on any particular person. And so one of the things that's really interesting and scary about Facebook is, from like an echo chamber perspective, if you go on any one of the however hundreds of millions of people are on Facebook's on their, you go on their phone and look at their feed.
Yeah.
That feed is going to be unique in every way 100%. To that person. And so it's very interesting now when you try and have political conversations with people in person where you ask, I saw this thing, you didn't see that thing. No, they would not have saw that thing. There's no way that they can see that thing, because if they do not have the exact same data points as you, like the same things, comment the same things on the same people, share this post, share that post, whatever, they are going to see a totally different reality. And so now we have this question of shared reality falseness between every single person, because the reality that you are taking in from your phone is the reality that is being fed to you by the algorithm, and that algorithm is creating a totally unique world just for you. Yeah. And
And that's what they want.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's really easy because like, even if you watched the debate, the presidential debates or the vice presidential debates, right? If you flip flopped between different news channels, you were getting a totally different story. This person won because this, the other person won because that, just depending on what you were looking at. But extrapolate that out, what, 300 million times or whatever it is, the number of people on Facebook, that's the number of truths that are being fed out right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you break that down and you look at it, it is creating thousands of bifurcated and disjointed realities among everyone else. And people are very happy to profit off of that, because if you want to push a certain reality, why not make money off that? Alex Jones sells brain pills, and
yeah.
And, and Joe Rogan sells brain pills. And even though those guys go on each other's shows, it's different kind of brain pills. And then there's other people that are selling,
or like podcasters sell Blue Chew.
Yeah.
And
matcha tea. And it's, and that brings back to an honest question of like, where does it sit of, is this done on purpose? Or is this just for profit? Like, is this just a result of the algorithm they created to keep people watching? You look at YouTube, and from day one of, I've worked in YouTube for forever, and day one of YouTube all the way up until today, the most important thing is watch time. That's what they want, is people staring at YouTube and clicking through videos. And is what they're doing and how they're feeding people into like crazy subgenres and niches, are they doing that as a way to just keep making money and keep people in the watch time?
Yeah.
The guy who invented the algorithm, this French guy, he went deep on this podcast and talked about it. And he was talking about how he wanted to create a system where there would be a next video that would challenge your beliefs. And he was completely shut down. Like nobody wanted to create a situation where your beliefs were challenged and then you would turn it off.
Right. You want a thing that's pacifying you and affirming you and sending you more in that direction every time you go on it. And, that's really interesting because there's a data point somewhere that's like 60% or something of people who ended up on a like fringe conspiracy page on Facebook over the last year or something like that was directed there by the Facebook algorithm.
Right.
So the question there is, did the algorithm send them there with the purpose of polarizing them, or is it by mistake, essentially? The algorithm saw that they liked, I don't know, somebody shared something about QAnon and they liked it. And then the Facebook algorithm had just happened to figure out that people who kind of like QAnon stuff also like Pizzagate stuff. And so then it starts pushing you that direction, and it starts feeding you, you might like this group about QAnon, or you might like this group about QAnon, and then it starts feeding you articles about the Pizzagate thing, and then it feeds you the flat earth stuff, and then and then it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. So unless you are essentially a dead true north perfect moderate,
right,
the algorithm is going to continue to feed you more stuff to keep you interested. And we know that fake news spreads 6 times faster than true news. We know that any post or news article that comes across Facebook or any other social media, the percentage chance that news article or whatever it is going to get shared or whatever, for every word of outrage, or for every word in the post that incites outrage, for each one of those words, the post has a 7% higher likelihood of being shared. And it's insane. And so like, if you even slightly believe in, whatever it is, right, and you see a post about that, and then it shows you another post, and then another
there's
post,
money behind it.
And we know that like, the fake news travels faster. We know that the more outrageous it is, the more likely it is to travel. It's just going to continue to show you more and more and more outrageous stuff, because that's the stuff that creates engagement. And so it's very easy. It's like a slippery slope kind of situation.
Yeah.
You kind of start, and then all of a sudden you are running.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're if you're starving in the morning and you wake up and there's a trail of bacon and you keep eating the bacon, you're going to head towards the direction where there's more and more bacon. It's
Right.
like it's not a thing that just drops off. So it's when you go back to the 2016 election, they look at people and how many people were involved with that, and they look at like how the Internet Research Agency, the Russian propaganda arm, was involved in 2016. And this is not a left wing or a right wing thing. I mean, both people who were appointed by Trump and people who were appointed by Obama both agreed that this is exactly what happened, that there were more than 150 million people that were directly had eyeballs on this Russian propaganda, and it wasn't, that's not a big question. That's just something that happened. And 150 million people, that's like, basically half the country. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And it's like measurable now if we look at this way that social media can like manipulate government even.
Yeah.
Because like, so they know that the Russians came in and was basically having spam bots sending fake information out and whatever. But like you can look at stuff like what was going on in Myanmar at the over the last like 2 years or whatever, and they can measurably show that Facebook had a direct hand in destabilizing the government there because they were able to utilize Facebook as a way to spread misinformation with the purpose of destabilizing the government. And I mean, it was, genocide there essentially.
And years ago, like they had to destabilize the monetary currency and do these different things.
Yeah, they had to assassinate people and do whatever. And now all they have to do is open up Facebook to that country.
Yeah. I mean, it's such an easy thing to manipulate. It's not even, that's not even difficult compared to like some of the stuff that they have to push into the United States because there's regulators in the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's the second Cold War, but instead of it being the US versus Russia with James Bond, it's Facebook versus the world.
Right. And I mean, and you go back to Myanmar, there's nobody like, there's no arbitrary person of knowledge like stopping that. That is just like, it's just happening, and everybody has their, they've all got like their Samsung phones and they're looking at them.
Yeah.
And there's no way to slow that down, And if you look back at like Tiananmen Square, like, something like that wouldn't have been able to happen today. China wouldn't have been able to get away with that because the information would have been unleashed.
Right.
And so it does go both ways, but it's also easy to lock down and create a major problem.
Well, China's a whole other conversation we can have another time. There's a number of conspiracies about COVID coming out,
and that'll
there.
Be a whole. That'll
have to be a whole thing. But as a side note,
we should be writing down what these whole things are.
I know.
Yeah.
We should talk about. There was a weird conspiracy that came out towards the beginning of COVID that we should talk about at some point. It was basically this conjecture that like a couple 100 million people's phone signals just magically disappeared from the airwaves, and they think that all those people died from COVID. And
I've read
they
a
were, like,
good
mass
amount about
burying
that.
them and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I know, like last week or the week before, so China has this thing called the Great Firewall.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they have the Great Wall.
It's a great name.
I know I just expositioned y'all and I'm terrible.
Good marketing.
Whatever. There was an application out there on the internet that you could go and get that would allow you to bypass the Great Firewall. So you could do stuff like access Google, get on Facebook and whatever.
Yeah.
That application has mysteriously disappeared from the internet. It is gone.
Yeah. It's a type of VPN. They pop up every once in a while, and like you see every time they pop up, you'll see this like flood of information come out. It's really fascinating. As much as I dislike Zero Hedge, they put some interesting information once in a while out about that. But while we're on that whole subject, I mean, we can start dropping into some of the some of the conspiracy theories that have come out like during COVID.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about those. Like did it come from China? Was it the Clintons? Did it come out? I think I said this in our episodes here. Like, was it did it come out of a basement in Guantanamo or something? Whatever. Has it already been in the country 2 years?
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's a
and all those things
move.
You could find all those theories online.
Yeah, they're out there.
Yeah. I mean, I feel vexed about all this. I've actually read a lot about all these different things, and I've kind of dove in a good amount. And I think my personal feelings is I think COVID kind of developed naturally. And one of the reasons I think that was because of very recently, not very recently, about a month ago, there was a woman who came out against the Chinese government and said that she was one of the people who helped develop COVID in her laboratory.
Oh, wow.
And so
I hadn't heard this one.
Okay, so yeah, and I'll in the show notes I'll put her name.
Okay.
And I'll put a couple links to stuff. So the only place that her article showed up was a non-peer-reviewed journal in the middle, just this non-peer-reviewed journal that anybody can put up their information on. And then the only people that picked it up from there was Zero Hedge, which I have a big problem with Zero Hedge, because Zero Hedge, they don't cite journalists, they don't cite their reporters. Okay. Everything is written by Tyler Durden, Fight Club. So they are what they are, and everybody is like, oh, who cares what they are, but they publish information. But for me, it's important who puts this stuff out. As a former journalist, I was an investigative reporter for years. And so on Zero Hedge, they put out some information, they published her stuff, and then all of a sudden it was picked up by Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson put her on the air and interviewed her. But then it came out that Steve Bannon and Giuliani were talking to her. So it was this kind of rogues gallery of people who are trying to create things. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way and all that stuff. And I looked at the research that she provided and looked at what people were saying about it. And it didn't seem plausible, so I think that there is a very, very large percentile chance that this was developed naturally in the natural world and kind of progressed and escaped the way it escaped, and so maybe that's my democratic view or something, but it is what it is, and that's kind of how I feel about it. And that feeds to a lot of different conspiracy theories that are involving in this. I don't know. Do you want to share your thoughts on how it started or anything along those lines?
Oh, I don't really know. I feel like we should have a whole episode on that.
I feel like I could go deep on that, just that.
Yeah. On this one, I feel like I kind of want to come back around a little bit to the Film Your Hospital stuff and the QAnon Pizzagate stuff and the TikTok and QAnon.
Okay, so let's jump into that. So the Film Your Hospital is a very interesting thing that came out about a month into lockdown. It was probably late April when people started really grinding on that. And what happened was a lot of kind of right-wing influencers started going to their local hospitals. And one of the original ones was in Lexington, Kentucky, and then there was one in Evansville, Indiana, and there was a couple of small hospitals in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And what they did was they would walk into the hospital and film what was going on there. And essentially they would walk into the visitors entrance of the hospital, which was obviously still open because you have to keep a hospital open because the emergency room is there and still happening. And so people would walk into the visitors room and see that it was completely empty because it was COVID. It was lockdown. There were no, knee surgeries weren't happening, and none of this stuff was happening at the time because everything was locked down. So a lot of these surgeries were pushed back. And so people were walking into hospitals and they were walking through different wings and videotaping empty hallways. And it was a very compelling thing because that is an interesting narrative, because at the same time, you're seeing on Drudge Report, you're seeing these endless scroll feeds of New York City Hospital full to limit, Miami Hospital full to limit. You're seeing all these things, ICUs bursting at the seams.
Yeah, and then you're even seeing the reports coming out of Italy where they're there's no more respirators, there's no more breathing machines or whatever those things are called. The hospitals are full, they're dumping their bodies in the street. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And you're just seeing all that, and you're
and then confused, these people are in Lexington and being look, there's nobody here. And so it's a compelling thing to see in light of those headlines, but it's also dishonest because the hospitals had shut down all non-emergency surgeries because
anything elective was out.
Everything elective,
normal services were out.
So there weren't even like orderlies. There weren't candy strippers. There was nobody working there, So they're walking into an empty building in an empty place, and they're not going into the emergency room.
It's empty on purpose.
Exactly. And so they're not going into the emergency room, So it was a very dishonest thing, and it spread quickly. And it got picked up by some of the QAnon people, and it led very heavily to the early narrative that COVID was a hoax.
Yeah.
Because people saw all this and they were like, well, why aren't there people just dying in those hallways? Because they didn't understand.
I think they were expecting like
just bodies.
like The Walking Dead or something.
Well, yeah. I mean, basically they expected people vomiting blood onto each other and falling over.
Yeah.
And you're not going to see that outside of the gift shop, when everything's locked down. So, so it was a dishonest thing that carried very far. And
yeah. And I mean, Pizzagate was very similar.
Well, yeah.
Like that spread really fast, and it turned out to be super fake, but then it had real world consequences. That guy.
Absolutely.
What is his name? Edgar Welch. Who's unfortunately
from here.
Yeah. From Salisbury, North Carolina.
Listener of the show, local.
Yeah. This dude sees all of this, Pizzagate stuff coming across the internet, and, decides one day he's going to stop the pedo ring, and he shows up in New York with a gun outside the pizza shop and gets tackled by the cops. And they're like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here to stop the pedophile ring. There's pedos in the
your basement.
And
there's no basement.
There is no basement. And like, this is just, this just really piles more onto that pile of the fake spreads fast, information,
so fast.
Real or fake fake information spreads fast, real information doesn't. And, you get pushed. Like, I don't even really fully understand QAnon. Like, I know more or less what it is, but I never really got into it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does that really play in?
I mean,
because I think you know way more about QAnon than me.
We'll do a whole QAnon thing, and okay,
I'll have to learn about it.
I'll walk you through the whole thing.
Okay.
I've been researching QAnon since early 2018, and kind of very involved with it. Like I was early in on the Reddit, the subreddit, and I've personally interviewed a bunch of journalists involved in researching QAnon, and I've talked to a lot of the people who are considered QAnon influencers. But it's it's an interesting thing. And it feeds back into the whole echo chamber, because what it is people hear what they want to hear, and they build up this situation where they want to hear that the world is evil and they want to be a part of it, because there is a whole situation where people feel powerless in their day-to-day lives.
I was literally just thinking that.
And COVID feeds into that, because you're told to stay home. You're told you're just a piece of the machine. You got to stay home. You have to do what the government tells you and be quiet.
Right. And the people who are yelling out about like wearing a mask is stepping on my rights and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like,
it's hurtful for some people.
I just don't believe that. There's a difference between inconvenience and stepping on your rights or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm all about the rights.
Totally agree.
We can go into that another time, but I'm happy to wear a mask because the mask is for protecting other people, not for protecting yourself.
It's safety,
and to me, like, if you're one of those people that's out here like, fuck a mask, you're one of those people who is very clearly not that concerned about other people's safety.
Right.
And all of this stuff is just the same thing. Like, if you're one of those people who goes on the internet and shares garbage without fact checking it, you don't care about the truth. Yeah. But it's so easy to do with the way that it's, I mean, I have absolutely shared fake shit. 100%. Everybody has.
Everybody has.
But, I've tried to change the way I think about that. So when I see something and I'm like, that's too good to be true.
Yeah.
Doing that little Google of it, is it really true? It's hard. Most people don't do it.
It is. Most people don't. And it's interesting as I have a lot of conversations a lot of times with people who are very involved with researching QAnon, and I'm in a vast majority where I feel sympathy with a lot of people who very heavily believe in QAnon, not because I believe in it at all. I don't. It's bullshit. But like, what I really feel is that like, I feel like they are people who are not empowered in their own existence, and they want a way to feel powerful. And so for them to look at a situation where the entire government that they don't agree with are pedophiles and horrible people, and they're the only ones who are in on it, they understand that it's a real bad, evil thing. And no matter how much they share it with others, they realize that they're the ones who are warning people, and it gives them a sense of power, and it gives them a sense of understanding.
Yeah.
And it creates a situation where they have, I don't want to say it's a leg up on other people, because that's not what it is. It's not them trying to feel more powerful. It's them just trying to feel relevant in their own lives, because they're lost in a place where nothing really makes sense, and they don't have power over their own existence.
I mean, I honestly think most people probably feel that way. Like, my opinion is most people, especially if you sit down and talk to them, you talk the issues out, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, probably you can agree on more things than not. Most people are probably, in my opinion, good, decent, understanding, intelligent people that you can talk to. And if you present them with a good, compelling argument, can change their mind and whatever. But at the same time, most people, look at this political landscape, what's going on in their lives, especially when you're adding COVID, and just feel powerless.
Yeah.
And then there's this social media thing happening at the same time where it's so easy to feel powerful by talking shit to what's his name on Reddit or whatever, or being toxic or sharing stuff that's not true or whatever.
Yeah.
And it gives you that sense of, power or whatever that you don't have. And so, like, especially with what I understand about QAnon, it's very easy to look at all of these politicians, which, I mean, I think they're all trash can, horrible people, but do I really believe they're all pedophiles? I mean, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if that was true.
Sure.
It realistically, is it true? Like, I don't know, but it's easy to believe because it's so easy to feel politically disenfranchised.
Of course,
even in the most free country in the world, you know what I mean? Because, like, I look at the choices politicians make and I'm like, are you stupid?
Yeah.
Like, are you stupid? You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff doesn't make sense to me. A lot of stuff doesn't make sense to me, and I'm just like,
I've probably had 300 or 400 conversations with deep QAnon believers in the past couple of years. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually having a lot of conversations with these people on social media. And and I'm talking every day with journalists, like people like Mike Rothschild that are like really looking into this, and people that are really examining this. And when you're talking to them and you really start digging into these thoughts, like, there is a thought there where you're thinking, like, if these people just went slightly one other direction, it wouldn't be this.
Yeah.
And you really look at what they're believing, and a lot of them actually do honestly believe Hillary Clinton peeled babies' faces off and ate it.
That's 100% true. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that video is still out there. They're waiting to drop that video.
She definitely
never denied it.
I mean, Clinton Foundation 100% assassinates people.
Probably.
I 100% believe that one.
But either way, you start talking to these people who like fully believe that, and you start like actually talking to them about their lives.
Yeah.
And I have personally many, many times, at least 100 times, had these conversations where I've shifted it to like, are you okay? Like, how's everything going with you? And it turns into them instantly dropping all of that and start talking about they've lost their job and it's really hard.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting because I think that there's this very easy public facade that you can put on that battles that.
Yeah. And that's what social media is really, really good at now.
Yeah.
And so I think it really ropes us back into the initial question we asked about the conspiracy theory is this on purpose or is it not?
Right.
Is it for money or is it not? Is it by accident? What's going on? Because, everything that we've talked about, it really just creates this, really makes more questions than it does answers. And, it's even hard to answer our own question.
Yeah. And I think the question comes back around to the reason it's difficult to answer is because I think that the social media companies set up a exercise of how to be profitable.
Yeah.
And it fell into this.
I mean, I think it started as a exercise in engagement. It's the same.
Absolutely.
It's the same way that, any app or any video game, they're out there, and the number one most important things to them at the end of the day are, if they're a business, making money.
Yep.
And then next to that, daily active users, time on platform, stuff like that. And, before they really made it a money game, it was an exercise in how do we create the highest possible engagement.
It all comes before the dollars. So every question of engagement, of money, they build all of that up before they can start selling.
Right. And then once they have you addicted, then they give you the ads.
Right.
But now we're so inundated with everything having ads. Mobile games have ads. Video games have ads.
Yeah.
They sell you a game and then they sell you the add-ons. You can buy the game, but you can disable ads if you give us money. The whole system has just become so inundated in this idea of pay attention to me now, pay attention to me longer, come back, pick your phone up. Here's an ad. Here's a thing.
Absolutely.
And, I really, at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's kind of the answer is it one or the other? It's both. It's all of them. Yeah. It's all of it together. And it was an exercise in engagement that they just happened to figure out worked really, really well.
Right.
And the question of whether it's on purpose or not is the part where they started hiring casino people to figure out to bring in that casino game kind of mentality to how do they keep you coming back and whatever. So I think it was an accident the way that it started, that it magically became popular, and then they started figuring out engagement, and then they made it, and then from there they were like, oh shit, this thing works. Let's take it to volume 11.
Kick it up, yeah.
And then it became on purpose.
Yeah, and I think the part where you're saying make it on purpose, I think that just means they're saying, let's make some money off this.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a single person who worked for any social media company who sat down and thought, you know what, let's make everyone anxious and upset.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's an unintended side effect.
Absolutely. And and it's horrible and it's evil.
Yeah, I mean, I think the algorithm is designed to generate engagement.
Yeah.
And they want engagement to sell ads and make money.
Absolutely.
I think the side effects of anxiety, depression, whatever, is really an unfortunate, unforeseen side effect that really came on unknowingly. Even the guy who designed the like button said he designed it, or the team that designed it with the idea that this would be a great way to spread positivity across the internet by allowing people to click a button and say that they like something. But now it's just run away, this unintended consequence of, I have to spend my entire life on platform. I have to show pictures of my boobs or whatever just to get more likes. I need more likes. I need likes. It's this fever game.
Yeah. I mean, they did not go into it thinking they were going to screw everyone up.
No,
Nobody could. Nobody would. I mean,
you would have to be a horrible person. Which you intentionally jump into something and be like, let's manipulate 300 million people.
And let's not fool ourselves. Those people exist. And we will talk about them in the future.
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think these were a bunch of tech nerds who came into it they grabbed onto a couple platforms. But Facebook was built by Sean Parker, right? Like it was built by the one dude.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Zuckerberg. Sorry, Sean Parker did MySpace.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, or no, Sean Parker did Napster. Sorry, he did Napster. Zuckerberg did Facebook. So Zuckerberg built Facebook. He didn't have any of this stuff in his brain, even though he's a weird robot and does whatever he does.
He's like a fleshy version of Data.
Really, he is. And like his haircut, I don't know why he's doing these weird Roman haircuts, but like this dude, like there is no moment in his brain where he was like, I'm going to screw up preteen girls. Like.
Nah, I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I think there's nefarious side issues now. Like they've changed as people from when the time Facebook started to now, to where, they sit in front of Congress and essentially talk to them like they're stupid and then sort of semi-lie to them about what they're doing with their data.
Right.
So yeah, no, I mean, I definitely get what you're saying and I agree.
And that leads into today where those people who are there today look at the algorithm and they think, well, I guess this is only screwing up 12 to 13-year-olds, so we can probably leave it there. Like those people are the ones screwing stuff up today.
Right.
Because there is no question that it's toxic and horrible. And all of the people that are looking at it and in charge of it should be working dramatically to change these things.
Yeah.
And every day they're not, those people are pieces of shit.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that leads us into the next question is,
right.
I mean, what do we do now? How do we fix this? Is it legislation? Because we're starting to see some of that.
Yeah.
Wyoming or some shit passed that law about, users within that state have to own their data and, it can't be used in any way that they, whatever. California is working on a similar law. But like, I mean, I don't even know what to ask. Like, what do we do? What do we even do?
Right, exactly. So, like, I mean, when you look at it at a macro level, and what you do today is, I mean, who knows? Because the thing is, like we talked about in the first episode, the last episode, is who's going to take responsibility for this?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be the company.
No, the companies will never take responsibility for this.
They'll be forced to, but can the government do it? Like, is it even capable?
Exactly. So let's look back at like cigarettes, So like if you look back at big tobacco and you look back at that and you look at 1997 when, big tobacco, all the tobacco companies had a reckoning and they had to pay Florida something like $11 billion in 1997. And it kind of started to change the way people looked at cigarettes. That was 1997. Like, how long were people smoking before that?
I mean, essentially forever.
For fucking ever. Like, all of history.
Yeah.
People were rolling tobacco thousands of years before that.
I mean, it didn't have all the chemicals sprayed on it.
Sure.
But like it does now, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. And it's unfortunate to me how long it takes for government to make decisions and really enact good, positive, change that works and whatever. And I mean, we're seeing a lot of that now where it's just like, I mean, in my opinion, the government is broken. They spend more of their time fighting against each other and trying to stop the other guy than actually having people's best interest at heart and trying to do what they think is going to make life better. They're just trying to stop the other guy from doing whatever their thing is. So it's, to me, I think, and we touched on this last time, it comes down to personal responsibility.
Absolutely.
It comes down to you making the choice to, I'm not saying walk away, but know that by engaging, you're doing something bad to yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, it has to be the same way people started looking at things the way they looked at cigarettes. And people have to look at what they do on social media on a day-to-day basis, and they have to look at how it affects their sleep patterns, their interactions, all these different things. And they have to come to terms with it, because otherwise there's going down the same road of getting like lung cancer and not seeing what happens with the cigarette companies.
Right. It's like being told you have lung cancer and then lighting up right there in the room. But it's interesting because like, so as an example, our one last quote or whatever for the show. So here's a good example of why a reason you might want to think about limiting your use, right? So there was a study done where they basically took away people's access to Facebook. And 1 month away from Facebook led to significant improvements in emotional well-being in an experiment that studied over 1,600 American adults who normally used Facebook for up to 1 hour a day. And deactivating their Facebook account led to I think I already said this, significant increase in emotional well-being, including a reduction in loneliness and an increase in happiness, as well as a significant reduction in their personal political polarization.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be from an individual,
Right.
from the beginning. And you have to take control of it yourself. There's no other option.
Right.
Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Right. So we can do stuff like, I think we mentioned this last show, turning off push notifications,
Absolutely.
turning notifications off altogether.
Going black and white. Yeah.
Yeah, going black and white mode, just trying to put your phone down more or, whatever. Like, I'm not over here trying to not use it at all. That's not what I'm saying. But, if I can decrease my usage 1% a week for the next 10 weeks or something, or, or whatever.
Yeah. I think, there's the whole, like, what is it? No Nut November, where people don't like masturbate for November. I think
I have never heard that one. I've heard the
Sober
no shave,
October.
no shave November. You grow mustache.
Yeah, there's no shave November.
I already have a permanent beard, so
yeah, I've had a beard forever, but like it's but I really think like there should be some sort of movement because we have, like I said before, there's the No Nut November where people don't like masturbate for November for whatever their reasons are. There's the no shave where people don't shave to like bring awareness to prostate cancer. And there's all these different movements. Sober October, where people like, go sober and see how much.
We need like a no Facebook February or something.
Right. And there's a lot of people that take January off of drinking. And I think.
Oof, pass.
Yeah, whole January. Could you imagine? I think it would be pretty amazing if there was like a month where we just kind of like, maybe July, not a lot going on, just kind of shut it down.
Yeah, most people are on vacation.
Live your
kids
life.
Kids are at Y camp or whatever they're doing. Yeah.
Do whatever, live your life. Just enjoy it.
I know I've definitely thought about it as and I think I said this to my wife at some point. I just wanted to have less notifications and be staring at my phone less, especially having in the middle of COVID with a work from home job, with, everything that's going on right now with the political scene and just everything that's going on. It's just like, it's such a weight. Like it just eats away at you.
Right.
That I looked at her one day and I was like, I'm going to turn all my notifications off on my phone. So unless it's an email, a text message, or a phone call, I don't want to know about it. And she was like, I did that a couple weeks ago and it's been great. And I was like, okay, sick. I mean, don't say anything to me, but and the point I ended up making to her is I just wanted to spend more time in the real.
Yeah.
I wanted to live a life in the land of the real.
Yeah.
And I spend so much time staring at a computer for work, looking at my phone
all day.
for work and getting pulled into all of this Facebook and Instagram and Reddit garbage that, I don't think it really hit me just how much time I was spending in the digital space and that every second I was doing that was time I was not spending in the land of the real. And that to me, like, I mean, I'm only 30 and some change, but, I don't want to be 60 and look back on my, 30s and go, man, my 20s were so much better because I spent less time on my phone. You know what I mean? Or like get to the part where I finally have a kid and I can't take my face, can't get my eyes off my phone long enough to see their first word or see their first step or miss something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's funny is, last week we kind of got deep into like stuff you can do to like put your phone down more.
Yeah.
And one of the things I started doing was whenever I would walk through the kitchen, I would toss my phone in the utensil drawer and just slam it shut and like just go about the rest of my day because, during a regular day, like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, my laptop is there because I'm working. So I'm nearby.
Right.
So Slack is open, all that stuff is open. And I started tossing my phone just in a drawer and ignoring it for work hours.
Oh, interesting.
And I realized like at the end of the week, I pulled up my whole like, digital well-being stats or whatever.
Yeah.
And everything was down a lot, like 80%.
That's tough to me because I definitely have a millennial for a wife. And if she texts me and I don't respond, I'm literally, I'm dead.
Same.
And I don't have a work phone either. My cell phone is my work phone. So I would love to do that.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned to Jake before we started the cast, my wife and I went to the mountains the other weekend to just kind of get away, do some primitive camping and whatever. And at some point while we were up there, I turned my phone off, powered it down, threw it in my backpack. I didn't look at it for 2 days. It was great.
All right, here's what you need to do. You got to sync your phone to your laptop or your computer so that you get texts and you see your calls there, but then leave your phone somewhere else.
I should figure out how to do that.
It's pretty simple. It's not a big deal.
I know I can get a VM phone
because you have an Apple. You have an iPhone, right?
Yeah, but I have a PC.
Oh, that's right. But yeah, so anyway, but if you could figure out how to link that up, and then just not have your phone, because what I noticed was down was stupid Instagram, Reddit, stuff I usually don't look. I don't look at it off hours because outside of work hours, I'm with my daughter and my wife, and I tend to not look at my phone a lot. So I really I realized I was grinding on those stupid sites during work hours.
Yeah. See, my wife's a millennial, so even when we're hanging out, she's on her phone. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we got to do something. We got to figure it out.
Yeah. Do something. If you have an idea of what we could do to do better, shoot us an email.
Yeah, shoot us an email.
Brewluminati@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. This episode's gotten very long. I think we bring it to a close now. Maybe
we're on Twitter and Instagram at the Brewluminati 1L. Go ahead and jump in there.
But yeah, guys, so thank you for listening. We will be back next week with another show. Not sure what that's going to be about yet. But if you guys have anything you want us to talk about or anything like that, shoot us an email. Look us up on the social medias, which clearly we apparently think are the devil.
We'll probably ignore.
We will leave you on read.
Joining us for this episode of Brewluminati. Our intro and outro music is written by Dungeness. Want to learn more about the topics we cover and who we are? Join us on Facebook and Instagram at Brewluminati Podcast for behind-the-scenes content and updates. Do you have mystical powers of insight or just questions, suggestions, and feedback? Reach out to us at thebrewluminati@gmail.com. Are you ready to immerse yourself into the inner circle? Visit patreon.com/Brewluminati Podcast. For the same price as a cup of coffee or sandwich you won't remember, because of mind control, you can join the Brewluminati and lift the veil on the true mysteries of the universe. Your membership to the Conclave unlocks access to our secret Discord server, bonus Patreon-only content, behind-the-scenes talks, and much more. Every dollar spent not only helps us reveal the truths of the world, but also frees us to make the show better, weirder, and allows us to go deeper and deeper into the void while funding our next beer run. When we're not talking conspiracies and beer, we're passionate about saving the forgotten puppies and kitties of the world. 10% of every dollar you donate goes directly to the Best Friend Pet Adoption Agency. They are a local 501c3 all-breed, all-foster cat and dog rescue that will save the life of a pet who never had a chance. Keep an eye out because we'll be posting pictures of the lives our listeners save. For more information on Best Friend Pet Adoption, head over to bfpa.org. Join us again next week for another episode of Brewluminati. We know you will, because again, mind control is real.